Hello, everyone. Good evening. I'm very glad to be here, and thank you for the invitation, Jason and Josiah. And one of my topics of interest, yes, it has been from the last 3 years, I think so, when I discovered the benefits of fasting and how we can implement this very easy tool in order to not just prevent diabetes, but reverse diabetes, not just prevent hypertension, but also reverse hypertension. And for persons that they are suffering from early dementia, or even persons with Alzheimer's, persons that they are already or with, an age of 65 years old, is one of the best things to do in order to prevent and also reverse these kind of situations. I came to UG Punch in 2014, coming from Mexico, in order to enhance my medical practice, in order to enhance my medical practice in preventive medicine. I didn't know, or I was not expecting that my medical practice is going to change radical in order to the way how to see patients, the way how to treat diseases, not just symptoms, but going to the root of the problem, the cause of the hypertension, the cause of the diabetes, right? Well, tonight, we're going to discover how you can utilize, how you can use this simple topic of this simple skill or tool in order to prevent these diseases. I was 16 years old, and we were driving with my family from one state in the south of Mexico. It was Sabbath night. We were driving from, it was the graduation of my older brother. He's an accountant, and the driver was my uncle. That night, we left the place around 12 p.m., and we needed to drive for the whole night to get our destination on Sunday morning because my uncle needed to work the next day. Well, like every person, right, if you are thinking that you are going to be driving for the whole night, you are going to be drinking what? Coffee, right? Probably Coca-Cola. Probably, we're in Mexico. I'm Mexican. He was eating some tacos before the trip, right? In order to have a good energy, probably, right? Interesting thing that after 2 hours of driving, he started to have some stomach discomfort, nausea, some pain. So my father took the place, and he continues driving. 4 hours, 5 hours after driving, he continues to having this severe pain and heartburn and all his chest. My grandma, that was with us, she gave him one of our antacids in order to calm the stomach. We came to my home. We came to our destination around 6 a.m. I remember very well that morning. He passed by the house of one of his employees, and he told him, you know what? Today I am not going to be working, but because I feel stomach discomfort, and I feel not very good to be working today. Interesting thing, when he got home, my auntie told him, you know what? This is more serious. This is not just a stomach discomfort. He went to the hospital. When he got to the hospital, his blood sugar, it was around 600 milligrams. When you know that the blood sugar in a normal person, in a healthy person, it has to be less than 90 milligrams, right? And he was having lectures or readings of the blood sugar around 600. He got the hospital around 8 a.m., I think so. I went to my home, and I was with my parents. 2 hours later, my auntie called us, my uncle, death, a consequence of massive heart attack. I remember very well because I was sitting with him in the back seat of the car, and during the whole trip, he was holding his chest with a terrible pain, a terrible discomfort. But what happened with my uncle? He was around 68 years old. I never knew that he was diabetic. We never knew that he had this kind of disease because all the time I used to see him drinking coffee, drinking Coca-Cola. He was overweight. I never saw him exercising. He was not vegetarian. So, 18 years later, I said, wow, heart attack, a massive heart attack. It killed my uncle. But here in the US, every minute, this kind of stories is happening. Every minute, or more than many times every minute, right? But the most important is what? Well, the most interesting of this story is that we could prevent it, this situation. We could prevent it. So, this is the people in 1900s here in US, the population, they were dying a consequence of infectious diseases. 53% they were dying a consequence of infectious diseases. What happened in 2010? Well, in 2010, the people is dying a consequence of 32% a consequence of cancer and 33% a consequence of cardiovascular disease. And there is one disease that is coming up, it's emerging, and this is the Alzheimer's disease. In UK, already it's one of the leading causes of death as well. Competing with cardiovascular diseases. We know that one of the complications of diabetes is going to be cardiovascular diseases, right? So it has been a dramatic shift in the way how the people is dying now. We have a very good antibiotics, right? We have a very good protocols in order to treat this infectious disease, but what's happening now? The people is dying a consequence of something that we can and that we could reverse, right? This is one map of the obesity here of the U.S. Well, Texas, South Carolina, Alabama, Missouri, they are in the states with the highest rates of obesity. Michigan is in the map as well. The places or the states in dark blue color, they are the states with the highest rates of obesity, right? So we know that obesity is one of the leading causes of complications here in the U.S. By the way, the epidemic of obesity is not a consequence of fat per se, but it's a consequence of refined carbohydrates or a consequence of sugar, right? But when you see a map of the rates and incidence of cancer, it's not a big difference from the same states that they have the highest rates of obesity. You will see Indiana as well, you will see Alabama, you will see Missouri, you will see Texas, not Texas, Oklahoma, right? So, 90,000 persons, they are going to develop cancer a consequence of obesity a year, 90,000 persons a year. So, as you can see here, there is a parallelism in the rates of obesity and the rates of cancer. And if you see the map as well of the incidence of diabetes, you will see the same pattern. You will see the same states in the dark, with the darkest color, right? The same pattern. What about if I tell you that one of the simple things in order to reverse obesity is diabetes? Sorry, it's fasting. Very simple, right? Well, there are some who will be benefited from what? By the abstinence from food for a day or two every week than by any amount of treatment or medical advice. To fast 1 day a week will be of incalculable benefit of them, right? Fasting 1 or 2 days a week. Hippocrates, who was a father of the medicine, he said, our medicine should be our what? Our food. But when you eat, when you are sick, is to feed your sickness. Instead of using medicine, rather what? Fasting a day. Fast a day. What happened with our approach of the diseases? Hippocrates was a father of the medicine, right? But our best example that we have in the Bible is Jesus. He was fasting for how many days? He was fasting for 40 days, right? And he was fasting in order to enhance or in order to improve this spirituality, but also physically before to start his ministry, right? And we can say, well, probably he was able to fast 40 days because he was God. But I'm telling you something, an average person of 140 pounds with a height of 5'7", they are able to fast, or they have the storage of energy in order to fast at least 40 days. At least 40 days. So if your weight is around 140, and your height is around 5'5", 5'6", 5'7", you will be able to fast at least 3 days. So there is no excuse. One of our best treatments in the sanitarium, in the lifestyle center for all our guests, the first week they have to be fasting for 3 days. And we'll see why. Fasting is not something new. Isaac Jennings, he was one of the first physicians here in the U.S. that introduced the therapeutic fasting. Even he was one of the first physicians that discarded the use of the medicine. By the way, he was the father of the hygienic treatment, right? We have some other physicians, for example, Dr. Jackson's, McFadden's, and some others physicians, they continue with the hygienic treatment, right? Well, what happened with our history, right? Dr. John Kellogg, he was one of the physicians that he was advising the use of fasting. Something very interesting happened in the 1918s. It was a flu epidemic, right? It's called the Spanish flu epidemic, or the Spanish flu, that killed around the world 20 millions of people, around the world, 20 millions of people. But something interesting happened in these kind of sanatoriums. It was not just in Barrow Creek. It was also in McFadden's and Dr. Jackson's sanatorium as well, and some other sanatoriums that they used to treat people with hydrotherapy, with vegetarian diet. They used to treat people with fermentations, with fever treatments, with some other treatments, natural approach. And something interesting happened in these kind of sanatoriums. They didn't have any person death a consequence of this epidemic. But the hospital around these kind of sanatoriums, they were losing around 33% of their patients. And they were using fasting as well. So fasting is nothing new, right? So what happens when you are eating? Because we need to grasp the idea of what happened in your body when you are fasting, right? Well, you are eating carbohydrates, right? You are eating carbohydrates, the carbohydrates, your body is going to break down, right? In order to want to use like energy, right? And to storage also as an energy. But this is the thing, when you are eating a lot of refined carbohydrates and your body is not using as an energy, and your body is not storage these carbohydrates remains as an energy, there is a hormone that you know, right? It's called insulin. What's the work of the insulin? Stabilize the blood sugar, right? But per se, the insulin, it's lipogenic. And what's this mean? Well, lipo means fat, and genic means, or genesis means start. The insulin is the hormone that is going to produce, or is going to convert, the remainder of carbohydrates that your body is not using as a energy, that your body is not using or storage as a energy, as in the form of a glycogen in your liver and in your muscles. The insulin is going to convert this remainder of blood sugar into fat. And where is going to be stored this fat? Because this is very important. One of the principles, or the principal organ that, or system that's going to be affected by this insulin process, insulin converted fat process, is your liver. Did you hear about fatty liver, right? Do you hear about, insulin resistance, right? So when you're eating high levels of refined carbohydrates, you will have high levels of blood sugar, and you will have high levels of insulin, and by a consequence, you will have what? High levels of fat, because the insulin per se is the hormone that is going to produce fat, right? And you can see these persons that they are under the treatment with insulin. It's very difficult that they can lose weight, right? So, by the way, high levels of insulin or hyperinsulinemia is related with 10% of all the cancers. 10% of all the cancers are related with insulin. We are going to see this. Okay, so refined carbohydrates, high levels of glucose, high levels of insulin, high levels of fat, storage in your liver, producing fatty liver, producing insulin resistance, and also this fat is going to be stored in your muscle cells as well, producing also insulin resistant, which insulin resistant is the first step in order to develop prediabetes, and then diabetes, right? What happens with fats? We need fats, okay? We need fats. We need fats in order to maintain every cell in your body. Every cell in your body, the membrane, the outer layer of the cells, they have fat, right? But it depends what kind of fat you are eating. You are going to promote inflammation, or you are going to decrease or prevent inflammation. And this is another topic for tomorrow afternoon. So it's going to be at 6 about inflammation, how we are going to counteract the cascade of inflammation, because this is the underlying cause of many diseases, inflammation, right? So we need fats. You need fats in order to produce your testosterone. You need fats in order to produce estrogens. You need fat in order to absorb some vitamins, for example, vitamin D, vitamin E, vitamin K, and vitamin A, right? So we need fats, okay? What about proteins? Well, proteins, we are going to need, or we are eating proteins in order to produce a good functionality of our muscles. Storage as an energy, but also when you are eating a lot of high amounts of proteins, it's going to be related also with the production of fat as well, right? So here is the process, insulin. Insulin is going to promote in the liver, fatty liver, well, high levels of insulin, okay? Insulin is good, okay? We need insulin. I mean, if you are type 1 diabetes, please continue with your insulin. Yes, continue with your insulin if you are type 1 diabetic, okay? But we need insulin in a very low amounts. Well, as I mentioned before, the insulin is going to promote fatty liver, it's going to promote storage in your liver, it's going to promote storage in your muscles, it's going to promote storage of fat in your muscle, and also it's going to promote the blocking process, or is going to block the process of oxidation of your fat. If you have high levels of insulin, you won't be able to lose fat. And this is very important because persons that they are doing exercise, the exercise is something that you need to do every day, but don't be expecting that you are going to be burning fat in order when you are exercising, because what you are doing is just burning glycogen. A glycogen is just glucose and water, okay? You will need to exercise or having intensive exercise for 3 hours in order to deplete your glycogen storage and start to break down fat, right? And one of the simple things in order to break down fat, because that's the goal, that's the purpose, is just fasting, and we'll see why. In the opposite side, we have what? We have the glucagon hormone. This is another hormone that your body is going to be producing, specific in your pancreas. The pancreas is going to be producing insulin and glucagon. But these two hormones, insulin and glucagon, they cannot work together because they have opposite functions. Okay? If you have a high levels of insulin, you cannot have a high levels of glucagon. If you have a high levels of glucagon, you can't have a high levels of insulin, right? So the work of the glucagon is what? Probably you cannot see it in here, but one of the things that I like glucagon is because the glucagon is going to stimulate the fat breakdown from your liver. It's going to stimulate also the survival of the cells of your liver. It's going to increase the blood flow to your kidneys and to your brain, the glucagon. But friends, if you have a high levels of insulin during the whole day, because you have been eating snacks during the whole day, because you are having these 5 meals a day, your levels of insulin, they are going to be elevated during the whole day, and you won't have any benefit of the detoxification or the detoxify benefit from the glucagon. So what do we need to do? Fasting, right? Well, when you are fasting for 12 hours, your body is going to be functioning by the actions of glycogen, okay? Glycogen is just as a storage of energy that is going to be breakdown by the stimulation of the glucagon hormone, okay? After 14 hours of fasting, 16 hours of fasting, your body is going to be functioning by the action of these compounds. They call what? Ketones bodies. Do you hear about the keto diet? Do you hear about the ketogenic diet? Well, the ketogenic diet, you will need to eat how much of fat you will need to eat to get or to have this ketogenic diet. Do you know that? Almost 90%, right? Because, well, this is the idea. The idea is that when you are eating like a 90% of fat, your liver is going to convert right away, very rapidly, these ketones, okay? Ketones bodies, ketogenic diet. And ketones bodies is an alternative source of energy for your brain and from your muscles, okay? This is the reason about ketones, right? And one of the importance of the ketone bodies is that ketones is going to enhance the function of your kidneys, it's going to enhance the function of your brain, it's going to enhance the function of your liver, it's going to enhance, in the past, scientists believe that ketones, they were just like a waste, or they was like a toxins, right? That your body was producing, but now not. Now you have I mean, we have many benefits discovered from these compounds, right? Okay, you are going to be producing ketones after 14 or 16 hours of fasting. So you won't have to be in a high-fat diet in order to produce ketones. Why? Because naturally, physiologically, our Creator, or God, told us, just fast, right? And you will be producing these ketones. You don't need to have an unhealthy diet. By the way, ketogenic diet is nothing new. That was created in the 1920s, and it was for pediatrics. Children that they had convulsions or epilepsy, they used to use this kind of diet, the ketogenic diet, because it seems like the ketones, they are going to stabilize your neurons. And now it's discovered that these ketones, they are going to promote also that production of new neurons in your brain or in your hippocampal area, which is the area of the memory, right? And also it's going to enhance the interconnection of your neurons. Okay, another hormone, the insulin growth factor 1 hormone. This is one hormone that is going to be producing in your, when you are around 15, 18, even when you are a child, right? Insulin growth factor 1, okay? And one of the functions of this hormone is to produce or enhance or stimulate the multiplication of your cells. This is the function of this hormone, okay? Insulin growth factor 1. But it's interesting because who's going to promote the production of these hormones, insulin growth factor 1, is going to be insulin. It's going to be also a high protein diet. So, what is the importance of this hormone? Well, because it seems that when you have a high levels of these hormones, persons with prostate cancers, persons with breast cancer, persons with any kind of cancer, it seems that this hormone is going to trigger or stimulate that multiplication of these cells, of these abnormal cells. But who is the trigger? Insulin. Insulin is a trigger. Insulin is the promoter to this hormone, right? In the 1950s, the University of Minnesota compared the results of food deprivation during the Second World War in some countries of Europe, right? They were having probably, low levels of carbohydrates intake, or protein intake, or fat intake. I'm not sure what it was their food in those in that period of time. So they said, okay, we are going to compare with a group of people, 32 volunteers, and they were fasting for 8 months. Okay, 8 months. During the Second World War, they observed that many of these people, this population, they had malnourishment or malnourished, a consequence of food deprivation, right? For 8 months, kind of. So they wanted to compare. But the interesting thing is the fasting for 8 months, only water, only fasting, did not show any, or did not cause any vitamin or mineral deficiency. Nothing. Well, the research mentioned that fasting is good for cardiovascular disease and hypertension, eczema, diabetes, epilepsy, obesity, pancreatitis, immune and inflammatory conditions like rheumatoid arthritis, like lupus, one of the best tools for these kind of diseases, psoriasis, asthma, and cancer, right? One of the big names right now, and you can check his book, is Dr. Walter Longo. His book is called The Longevity Diet. He has many research very recent research in cancer, or how approach the cancer, or how to treat the cancer with just therapeutic fasting, right? Okay. BNDF. Persons with Alzheimer, persons with dementia, Parkinson, and any other neurological disease, they are going to be affected in a positive way when they are fasting. Why? Because it seems that this caloric restriction diet, or this fasting process, the ketones, they are going to stimulate the production of this BNDF. And what are these BNDF? Well, these compounds, they are going to travel to your brain, and these BNDF, they are going to stimulate the production of new neurons, or neurogenesis. And not only that, but also they are going to enhance the interconnection between neurons, the neuroplasticity, right? But not only that, it seems like these ketones bodies, they are going also to enhance or promote the DNA repair, and we know that cancer is what? A problem with your DNA, a mutation in your DNA, abnormal cancer cells. This is right. So not only that, it's going to promote antioxidants also in your brain. So one of the simple ways in order to produce this BNDF is when you are having a more than 14 hours of fasting, right? In the Lifestyle Center, the first week, our guests, they need to fast 72 hours. It's only water fasting, right? Please, if you have not been fasting before, don't try to fast for 72 hours, okay? You can start with 1 day. You can start having like 2 meals a day, and having this like 17 or 16 hours of fasting every day, eating in a window period of 12 hours probably, or 8 hours, right? So one of the benefits in order to enhance the brain, the brain functionality, is just fasting. Something very important, person with Alzheimer's, they have like a 20 to 30% of deficit of glucose uptake, okay? What does it mean? Okay, they cannot absorb glucose right away from the circulation, right? 20 to 30% a deficit in glucose uptake, okay? So what I mean is that they need an alternative source of energy, right? And you hear about the coconut oil, right? Why it's so important, the coconut oil, in treating these kind of persons? Well, because the coconut oil is going to be converted in medium chain fatty acid, or MCT oils. You heard about MCT oils, right? By the liver. And these oils, or these fats, they are the only fats that they can cross the blood-brain barrier, directing to your brain in order to give them energy to your neurons. Something that person with Alzheimer needed, right? And this is another important thing, because probably you don't have Alzheimer, you don't have early dementia, but your age is already 65 years old or above, right? They have around 14 to 18% of deficit glucose uptake from the brain, right? What I mean is that they need an alternative source of energy. And fasting can provide this energy. But you remember, you are going to be producing this alternative energy after 14 hours of fasting, right? Well, fasting is not about time. Fasting is just what? The absence of food, right? The absence of nutrients, the absence of proteins, carbohydrates, or fat. Okay, this is fasting. Okay, this kind of like a juicing fast, or I'm gonna drink some juices, I'm gonna drink some any other fruit fast. I will say this is not specific fasting, but this is just a caloric restriction diet, right? Fasting is just the absence of nutrients, okay? Nutrients of the absence of, nutrients. It's not about time, okay? So you can be fasting for 6 hours, and you are fasting. You are actually fasting. You can be fasting for 16 hours, and you actually you are fasting, right? So what happens between meals? Why it's very important that you need to wait at least 5 or 6 hours in order to have your second meal. Or probably why is so important this 2-meal plan a day? That this is very popular now, and they call like the intermittent fasting or fasting 16 hours every day. They say that having 16 hours of 16 hours of fasting a day, women with risk of breast cancer, they can decrease up to 68% the risk of breast cancer fasting 16 hours a day. Eating 2 meals a day, right? Well, something happens right after you are eating. There's a hormone that is called the motilin hormone. And the motilin hormone, the name motilin is coming from motion, from movement, right? So right after you are eating, this hormone is going to trigger the propulsive movement of your gastrointestinal tract, okay? So this hormone is called the housekeeper of the gut, increases peristalsis in the small intestine and clears out the gut and prepare for the next meal. This movement initiates during fasting that begins in the stomach and moves undigested material from the stomach and the small intestine into the colon. So this hormone, motilin hormone, is going to promote the good what? The good movement, okay, of your gastrointestinal tract. And this is a key. This is a key because if you don't have a good movement, if you don't have a good bowel movement, what's going to happen? Well, you are ending up having constipations. You are ending up having some diverticulosis or diverticular. You will end up having many, many complications about this situation. But this is something very important. Also, as you can see, that you can read this. This movement prevents the backflow of bacteria from the colon into the small intestine and its subsequent overgrowth in the distal ileum. Did you hear about the small intestinal bacteria overgrowth? Did you hear about SIBO or SIBO? Did you hear about leaky gut? Did you hear about intestinal permeability? Well, this lack of production of these hormones is related with snacks. By the way, there is no such a thing like a healthy snacks. There does not exist a healthy snack. Why? Because when you are having snacks, what's going to happen? Well, you are not producing this hormone, and if you are not producing this hormone, you are not going to promote this propulsive movement, clearing your stomach, clearing out your intestines, in order to prepare you for the next meal. It's not going to happen. So, snacks is not good from the gastrointestinal standpoint, and also neither from the insulin process standpoint. It's interesting because tomorrow we're going to be talking about intestinal permeability, and one of the roots of the causes of this intestinal permeability, or leaky gut, or SIBO, that is one disease that everybody is talking about it now, is because you were eating between meals. And now, even an apple, even a stick of celery, even peanuts, it's going to interrupt the process of the production of this hormone, okay? So if you are eating between meals, you are going to infest your small intestine with bacteria. By the way, we have a valve in between your small and your, yes. No. No. Water is going to help you to maintain your gastrointestinal tract clean. Just don't drink water during your meals. But anything that is going to promote that digestion process. Water, it's okay. But if you add sugar to your water, if you add honey to your water, I mean, you are going to start with that digestion process. So this is the idea, right? Interesting thing is that the motivating hormone is going to be blocking by food, very acidic foods, which is just animal protein, and high levels of insulin, which is just refined carbohydrates, right? Okay, this valve. We have this valve, right, in between your colon and between your small intestine. And this valve, you have to be closed most of the time. Because if this valve is not closed, what's going to happen? Bacteria from your colon is going to infest your small intestine, right? And you will start having like this diarrhea, this constipation probably. You will start having this bloating or a lot of gas because bacteria is producing this process, right, of fermentation, right? So we don't want that. So we need to prevent that this valve or the opening of this valve most of the time. How? Very simple. Don't eat between meals. And we say that don't eat between meals in order to maintain the insulin levels in order, and don't eat between meals because you are going to end up having these problems, right? What about the 2 meals a day? 2 meals a day. Well, if we want to increase the glucagon and the motivating hormone levels, one of the simple things in order to enhance this process is having 2 meals a day, yes. It's interesting that I won't say there is not a good time specific. Between meals, you said 5 to 6 hours between meals, yes. But if you are going to be eating 2 meals a day, try that the last meal, it has to be, not in the night, okay? Our circadian rhythm, God created us with this circadian rhythm that in the night you won't be able to metabolize fat very well, and even you don't need sugar or you don't need food in the night. You can see some animals, right? By instinct, they don't eat in the night, right? As soon as it's getting dark, what's happening with them? Well, they are going to their caves or their nets, right? So we need to pay attention how the animals, they are doing this. And this is related with our circadian rhythm. This is related because in the night, you are not producing the same amount of insulin like in the morning. That's why the best meal have to be your breakfast. But we tend to do the opposite, right? Our light meal is our breakfast. Our lunch, well, it's getting better, but our big meal is in the night, promoting insulin resistance and promoting diabetes, because in the night you are not producing the same amount of insulin. And by the way, not only that, but yes, in the night you are not producing the same amount of insulin, and it seems that, well, not it seems, the new research mentioned that melatonin, right? You know melatonin. Melatonin it's a hormone, that's the best antioxidant in your body, right? If you are not sleeping well, or you are not sleeping early, you are not going to have a good production of this hormone, right? Many processes, right? So it seems like in the night, when you have a high levels of melatonin, this melatonin is going to travel from your brain into your pancreas and is going to stop the production of insulin. Yes. So if you stop the production of insulin, a consequence of melatonin in the night, and when is the time when the melatonin is going to be elevated? It happened only in the night, right? But what happened in the morning? In the morning, by consequence, you are not producing melatonin. So the melatonin is not doing this feedback, or is not suppressing the production of insulin. That's why the best meal, or the bigger meal, the biggest meal have to be in the morning, right? So yes, if you are going to start with this 2-meal plan a day, it doesn't matter in the morning what time. In the morning, you don't need to eat right away when you wake up, right after you wake up, okay? In the morning, you have enough cortisol, you have enough adrenaline, that these hormones, they are going to help you to maintain your brain and body in good functioning, okay? So you don't need to eat right away. You can eat 1, 2, or 3 hours after your breakfast, okay? So yes, the second meal, at least 6 hours apart, okay? And this is called the interdigestive period, right? What about dietary restriction diet? Well, the dietary restriction is to eat around 20 to 40% of your caloric intake, right? And this caloric restriction diet, it seems that it's going to not reverse, but slow down the aging process. Okay, this caloric restriction diet. For example, if you're a woman, you need to eat at least 2,000 calories a day. If you want to start this diet, you will need to eat at least 1,200 calories a day, right? Also, dietary restriction diet has been shown to improve arterial flow, mediated vasodilation, and also delay the development of atherosclerosis. It's going to enhance your circulation, and it's going to enhance also your heart functioning. Okay, by consequence, remember, because the only way in order to break down the fat from you, well, not the only way, but one of the simple ways of breaking down the fat is just with fasting. So by consequence, your triglycerides values, they are going to drop. Your blood pressure is going to drop as well. You are going to increase or enhance the production of your good cholesterol as well. Well, 174 patients, they were fasting for around 14 days, and after these 14 days, with supervised water-only fasting, 90% of them, after these 14 days, became normotensives, right? We have another study in 2002, 30 patients with a high blood pressure, also an average of 14 days, water-only fasting under medical supervision. After these 14 days of fasting, they were decreasing up to $3,000 or $2,700 of the cost of their medications, right? What about diabetes? Diabetes, right? Obesity and diabetes, right? Well, as I mentioned before, type 2 diabetics, they can fast without problem. But yes, during the fasting, don't take any medication for the diabetes, right? And if you are type 1 diabetic, I will tell you, don't do it. If you are going to do it only under medical supervision, okay? Type 1 diabetics. Perhaps the most famous study on obesity appeared in the medical journal, one of the medical journals of 1973, and you can look at this study. It's in internet, very, very easy to find it, which reported the experience of a 27-year-old man who fasted without complications for how many days? He didn't eat anything for 382 days. The only water, yes, only water. You can check the original article. Yes. His weight was 452. Yes, yes, 452, and he remains with 180 pounds, 196. Yes, 196. I mean, yeah, his weight after this fasting was 180, but then for the next 5 years he just increased to 196 pounds. It has been one of the, well, there's many studies on fasting. Yes. Yes, 180. When he finished for fasting, his weight, it was 180, but then he went up to 196, and he remains on 196. Of course, fasting, friends, is not a magic bullet, okay? It's not a magic bullet. It's not a magic pill. Fasting is come along with new start, right? Nutrition, exercise, sunshine, temperance, very important, right? And of course, trusting in God, trusting in our Creator. Yeah. Interesting that this man, he had some deficits of sodium and potassium during the first 6 weeks, I think so. Yeah, 6 weeks. And he was using some supplements of sodium and potassium. But after these 6 weeks, he didn't need any of these kind of supplements. And yes, but his weight was 452, right? Arthritis. One of our best tools in order enhance your stiffness of your fingers, arthralgias or joint pains, decrease the inflammation markers like the ESR and the C-reactive protein, and pain, swelling, and some other symptoms and signs of this disease. They were able to reduce these symptoms after 7 days of water-only fasting, right? What about suppressing growth cancer or cancer growth? One of the simple things why you need to do this therapy in order to quest persons with cancer is because you are going to reduce the blood sugar, decrease the levels of insulin, decrease the levels of insulin growth factor 1, increase the blood ketones, right, bodies, and promote the autophagia or autophagia. Autophagia is just the clearance of cells that they are producing only toxins because they are old cells, okay? And conditions that force cancer cells to rely more on metabolites and factors that limit it in the blood, thus resulting in cells death. Because the cancer cells, one of the primary source of energy of the cancer cells, it is sugar, and they cannot metabolize very well ketones in order to maintain the mitochondria or maintain the tiny organ in your cell to produce energy. That's why they cannot live under the process of fasting. Why? Because your blood sugar levels are low, your insulin growth factor is low, and you is going to promote also the clearance of the cells that your body needs to detoxify in order to prevent this continuing production of toxins, right? Very quick, a 75 years old man with diabetes type 2, obesity, hyperlipidemia. He came with us with all these conditions, 12 years, using 60 units of insulin, and stilipids and metformin, some of the medications that he was using. Of course, when he came with us, his fasting blood sugar, it was 173. 173, and the hemoglobin A1C, which is the percentage of your blood sugar from the last 3 months, right? This is one of the tools in order to diagnose diabetes. It was 12.0. When this number, they have to be less than 5.7. It was 12.0. Cholesterol was 192. The LDL, or bad cholesterol, was 124, when it have to be less than 80. And the insulin, he was producing insulin. Interesting. He was producing insulin, but he was on insulin, taking 60 units on insulin a day. He was fasting for 72 hours the first week. He was on greens diet, which is just eating mostly vegetables or greens. During the following week after fasting, he was exercising, he was walking, he was sunbathing, he was managing his stress, and the most important, spiritual counseling. 90%, friends, of the diseases, they are going to be the cause of mind problems, right? Stress. And when I said mind problems, I am talking about stress. I was listening to something yesterday, one neuroscientist. I took this from the book of Ministry of Healing, that 90% of the diseases coming from our mind, right? But it's interesting what this neuroscientist said. I mean, he was talking about diseases, and he said, well, the thing is that 9 out of 10 diseases coming from stress. I said, oh, interesting. Okay, interesting. It was one of the first time that I was confirming this statement, right? Okay, so after this spiritual counseling, stress management, and this change his lifestyle, he left the lifestyle center with a blood sugar on 101, almost the of a healthy person. Cholesterol drops to 164. Triglycerides from 158 to 80. The HDL went up to 47. And even he was producing only 2 units of insulin. But you know what? He left the lifestyle center, thanks God, without any unit of insulin and taking only like a half of the pill of the metformin. And he was taking like two medications apart or besides a metformin, right? So thanks God for this kind of improvements, right? And he was doing some fasting, right? Okay, principles about fasting. Well, don't exercise during fasting. Going for a short walk, remain in your house. Don't get very stressed during fasting. Drink plenty of water. Keep movement during fasting, okay? Sunlight, pure water, short walks, or light stretching is permissible. Rest, and of course, before and after the fasting, a plant-based diet. Many persons that they are fasting but they don't continue with this plant-based diet, they will have or they can have this rebound effect, or they can gain the weight again. Questions?
Two questions. So for the first fast, is it recommended 24 hours once a week or 16 hours once a week?
I will say, if you never fast before, or people that never fast before, just try to fast 1 day a week or 24 hours. If you can handle, 24 hours, you can go for a second day. If you can handle 2 days, well, probably you can go for a third day. But the best time is 72 hours, but not every week, at least every 3 months. Mm-hmm.
I tried a couple weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, and I started getting headaches.
Mm-hmm.
What do you do with that?
Well, drink plenty of water.
I was.
Yes, there's plenty of water, but how many hours you were fasting?
Maybe 6.
No, I didn't eat the night before, so I hadn't,
Well, I mean, there is a stage that's called a turbulent period of fasting, which is going to last like 7 days. You will have headaches. You will be very irritable. You will be very anxious. You will be very very bad mood.
I was all that.
Yes, because you are not accustomed to do that, and that's kind of like a normal. But please be careful. If you start like shaking, if you start to sweat, cold sweat, and you start like losing your orientation, well, yes, you need to drink at least like a juice in order to maintain your blood sugar levels in order, right? But kind of like headaches, irritability, anxiety, or this kind of mild symptoms, that's normal, right? I have this kind of, I had it when I used to fast, right? And I wanted to eat, right? Because I wanted to eat, because, okay, there is a hormone that's called the ghrelin hormone, okay? The ghrelin is one of the hormones that is going to go into your brain, is going to tell you know what, you need to eat, the ghrelin hormone. One of the simple ways in order to maintain the ghrelin hormones in order, because this ghrelin hormone is going to be producing when your stomach is empty, is drinking water to maintain your stomach distended, right? Your stomach. Mm-hmm.
And my last question, why, since there's so many benefits, why doesn't everyone know about this? Or why aren't more people? You'd think it'd be on one of those major medical news reports, NBC, ABC, the whole gamut.
Money is telling people don't eat.
Yeah, I don't want to go in controversy about this, but you can, the scientific community now, you can have like Walter Longo, Mark Matson, Jason Funk, that they are reversing diabetes, or they are even treating cancer with this kind of treatments. The FDA, or they are like fighting into this medical or conventional practice in order to accept this kind of therapies, right? I don't know if that's going to happen, right? I am not sure, because yes. But you can go to the internet, and even you can get this book. It was released in 2017, The Longevity Diet, Walter Longo, The Longevity Diet, and you can go to the Walter Longo Foundation, and he has many scientific articles that how cancer, how autoimmune disease, how hypertension, and how some other disease you can treat with fasting, right? Mm-hmm. He is in the University of California. Yes, Walter Longo, Valterlongo. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Two things. Really appreciated the lecture. I found in fasting that if I skip supper the night before, I sleep through the worst of it, and then I'm awake the next day. So if I only eat a lunch before the day I want to fast, and I don't eat supper that night, then I sleep through the headache period of my fasting, because that's usually during that, once you're passing the 7-hour mark from eating until, for me at least, for the next number of hours. And then I sleep through that, and I wake up the next morning, and my day goes a whole lot better than if I try to fast from supper. And then just one other quick thing, Silicon Valley, this is huge right now. So fasting is actually quite big over in California among your top executives that are either multimillionaires or multi-billionaires at the top CEOs of the companies. And they have figured out how to make money from it. That's a whole other topic. But it is actually cutting edge right now, because it clears up the brain and it allows them to function at a much higher level, which is in a very competitive environment. So it's definitely becoming more mainstream.
Yeah. You're right, Pastor. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
When I fast, I put lemon juice in my water, and sometimes I drink herbal tea. Does that reduce the effectiveness of fasting?
No, that will be okay. Yes, when I started to fast, that was like 2 years ago, And it was like a convenient for me because I was skipping breakfast, I was eating lunch, but during the weekend I used to eat only lunch on Friday, lunch on Sabbath or Saturday, and lunch on Sunday, right? It was okay, but I think so that would be better if we can start to fast from breakfast to breakfast. And please don't break the fast during supper because you are going to mess up or decrease the benefits of fasting, right? So you're going to fast from breakfast to breakfast.
Well, thank you very much for the information that we received.
You,
I've never read about that mortillin, so that's very good information this evening. I've got two questions. A couple of years back, I was working with a colleague of mine, and she wanted to reduce weight, and so she was advised to eat more regularly, but eat small meals more regularly, and that's better for you to reduce weight because your digestive system continues to work and helps you that. So what is your comment on that?
Yeah, well, the behind or the part of this having like 5 meals a day at least is to increase your metabolic rate. Okay, every time when you are eating, you are going to increase your metabolic rate. You are going to increase your metabolism, right? So by consequence, if you are increasing your metabolism, well, you are going to lose more energy, right? That could be one idea, right? But the problem is when you are eating 5 meals or 6 meals a day, even though they are micro meals, I mean, you are elevating the production of insulin, right? So, I mean, definitely, I mean, I wouldn't advise to somebody to use this kind of approach, right? Even it's much better having only 2 meals a day, even than 3. But, I mean, because the reason of the insulin, because the reason of the insulin growth factor, because the reason of these mechanisms that you are going to be triggering during this period of period between meals, right? So, not really. It's about metabolism. But it's interesting because if you want to increase your metabolism, well, just drink water during the day. 24% of your metabolism is going to be increased by drinking water. Going for a walk right after lunch, right after breakfast. But don't wait more than 1 hour. You need to go for a walk, a very brief walk, 20 minutes walk, right after breakfast, right? Right after lunch, in order to maintain stable your blood sugar, right? A brief walk. It doesn't have to be very rapid, just a brief, very, very, very brief walk, right?
Okay. My second question is about the fasting. There is a contention out there that if you fast for too long, your body goes into the mode of thinking, oh, I need to be eating, and now it's being depleted, so they tend to store, and there's a likelihood that you can actually increase your weight as opposed to reduce weight. What do you what do you say about that? Is that true?
Well, probably also is related to the metabolic rate or your metabolisms, right? Because, I mean, God created us with these chip or with these codes, very interesting that when you are fasting, I mean, when you have a long-term fasting, you are not going to be functioning by proteins, neither by sugar. You are going to be break down fat, right? But this is a problem because when you eliminate your fat, you will be producing energy from proteins, and this is a problem. Because you are going to start losing amino acids, you are going to start losing some minerals and vitamins as well, right? So, yes, the body is going to maintain a stable your metabolic rate, your metabolism. It's something happened also with the persons that when they are starting a diet, right? After a diet, I mean, plant-based diet, we'll say, right? Or Atkins diet. Yes, within the first 2 weeks, 3 weeks, they are going to be losing weight. After that, there's like a plateau, right? Why? Because the body have a setup of your metabolism already. So if you are eating If you were eating before 3,000 calories and you are accustomed to your body to eat, 2,000 calories, it's going to be set up to 2,000 calories. So now you need to move to another level, right? Not just the calories, but increase your exercise, having like a sauna therapy, having like a Russian steam. Any others treatments that they are going to enhance or increase your metabolism, right? Mm-hmm. Well, in the Bible, brothers and sisters, yes, what is fasting about? It's about food. It's about water. It's about negative thoughts. It's about what is the true fasting that God is asking us to do. Isaiah 58 mentioned, right, the people of Israel, they were fasting, they were doing this, they were doing the other. They had their checklist, right? Everything they were doing, but they were forgetting something very important, right? And Isaiah 58 talks about love. Talk about love God and love to your neighbor. And this is the true fasting. And when we can combine the physical and the spiritual fasting and the words that Isaiah 58 or God through Isaiah 58 is telling us, it says, the verse number 8, then your light shall break forth like the morning. Your healing shall spring forth speedily, and your righteousness, what? Shall go before you. The glory of the Lord shall be your reward. Then you shall call, and the Lord will answer. You shall cry, and he will say, here I am. If you take away what? From your midst. The pointer of what? The pointing of the finger and speaking wickedness. If you extend your soul to the hungry and satisfy the afflicted soul, then your light shall dawn in the darkness, and your darkness shall be as the noonday. Verse 11 says, the Lord will guide you continually and satisfy your soul in drought, and strengthen your bones. You shall be like a watered garden, and like a spring of water, whose waters do not fail. And this is words from our Creator. I hope, brothers and sisters, that we can apply not just the physical fast, but also the spiritual. And the spiritual fast is love. Love God and love everyone. Bless you.
Thank you very much, Adan. So, anyone learn at least a few things tonight? Yes. There's always something for everyone in every lecture. We can always learn something from someone, or from everyone. So, tomorrow night we have something going on. Is that right?
Yeah. So, we hope that you've been blessed tonight. I know I took some notes. Thank you, Dr. Sanchez, for being here and coming from Uchee Pines back to Michigan to spend this time and share with us. He has great things coming for us tomorrow as well. And so tomorrow in the afternoon at 4 o'clock, we're going to be meeting here again. And at 4 o'clock, we are going to learn more about maintaining a healthy gut situation and keeping our digestive tract in order, correct? Right, so that's going to be the next step. A little further more. We heard a little bit about it tonight. He is going to further and go into that some more with us tomorrow. At 5 o'clock, we're going to go downstairs and we're going to enjoy a evening potluck that is going to be plant-based, vegan in nature. So we are inviting everybody to find your best plant-based recipe and bring it in. Now that might be a simple bowl, head of lettuce, some other vegetables chopped up, put into that bowl and brought with you. We're going to be eating plants in different various and exciting different ways downstairs between 5 and 6. At the end of his time, we're going to go downstairs and eat. And then at around 6 o'clock, when we're finishing up, downstairs we're going to come back up here and learn about fighting off inflammation. And so that will wrap up tomorrow night around 7 o'clock. We'll be done with it all, and hopefully you will continue to have been blessed throughout the whole thing.
Awesome. Thank you, Jason and Adan. But before we go, how about we close with a word of prayer? Let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you so much for this wonderful Sabbath that you've given us, a time where we can commune with you and listen to your still small voice. Maybe it was heard tonight. Maybe you're convicting us on certain things that we could start to incorporate into our own lives. I pray that we would not push that away, but just continue to lead and guide us as we learn more about you and our own human physiology. Please be with everyone as they drive home.